I mean, that's impressive. I'm not gonna lie, but that's not gonna. Is that a vine? Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Totally unbelievable. Yeah, this is fun. Welcome to another episode of Experts React. I am Donny Dust, your expert and survivalist. Today, I will be passing judgment on Uncharted. Let's get into it. So he's running. That's impressive. All right, so I'm gonna say right off the bat, when it comes to like exploration and archaeology and looking for lost treasures and items, I don't know how accurate this is. I know a lot of archaeologists, and this is definitely what they don't do. There's no scaling of buildings and free solo rock climbing and getting into shootouts with, potential adversaries. Seems more like theft to me, you know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. All right, so he's climbing. He's shimmying over kind of a rock wall. Now that's doable. There are some handholds there that you could grab onto and shimmy, and kind of move left to right. Kind of, they call that bouldering. Wow. I always find it interesting that in a lot of these things with tombs and ancient cities, there's always lights burning. There's always a fire going. There's always something that's lighting the way for somebody. I mean, I couldn't imagine that being right. But I think it's important to note, like, just with what he's wearing, from like an expedition survival standpoint. I mean, he doesn't have a lot. Kind of running and jumping. I mean, what is he looking for? I mean, this is definitely different. I'm gonna be honest. So it looks like there's a sinkhole that is ultimately starting to kind of collapse inward. And I mean, this looks like a pretty huge sinkhole. And sinkholes do happen. I mean, usually it's where there's limestone deposits and they've been eroded over time by water. And eventually the weight on the top kind of just sinks on the inside and you fall into this chasm. Very much a lot of this city was built by limestone. I mean, that's very plausible. A sinkhole could collapse. There used to be a water source there. It's an ancient city. I mean, in my book, that's plausible. That could definitely happen. And then I'll work in that realistic. Yeah, wow. That's impressive. I'm not gonna lie, but realistically, a scale of 1 to 10, the feasibility of Nathan Drake to be able to do this stuff, jumping from cliff's edge to cliff's edge and fighting folks. I mean, you're looking at probably like a 2. He might be able to do one of those jumps, but that's probably, you got all in you, to be honest with you. I mean, climbing up a ladder, sure. Ascending onto a ledge like that, totally doable. I mean, that fall right there, he landed on his back. If we played that back, it looked like he landed on his back, his shoulder, even into his neck. I mean, he's broken something there. That material fell. I mean, he's going to be hurting. He's not going to be doing this after that fall. I mean, he's impressive, but not realistic. When surviving in the wild and you are faced with a certain obstacle that requires you to do some form of free climbing, you typically want to look for another route. But you got to think, there's different classes of climbing. You have class 1 to class 5. Think of class 1 as lightly walking on a trail with some sort of rock obstacles. Class 5 is on the extreme side, where you need ropes and harnesses and technical pieces of gear to help safely get you up and down a mountain. And you are in that survival situation and you have zero gear. You have none of that sort of stuff. You really want to avoid that sort of class of climbing, that technical climbing. You can scramble up rock faces, but with every foot you go, you just increase the risk of something happening, of a fall or something happening. Straight vertical climbing, absolutely avoid it. I mean, these people are world-class climbers, and what they're doing is probably even the best rock climbers in the world wouldn't be able to do that, as well as negotiate and shoot a target at the very, very top of the cliff. Absolutely not. Totally unbelievable. Yeah, this is fun.
We're all clear.
We're all clear. So, I mean, we don't get that kind of training in the Marine Corps, that's for sure. As a former Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. Um, yes, we learn different things as far as shooting, communicating, and moving, but like that sort of, assault up a cliff's face and negotiating targets is something we just, you're not going to get the training for that. It's not even a thing, to be honest with you. Hold on the torch. Spiders. Tons of spiders. Not in a million years. You can get spiders that could group together, but what are they eating in there? Spiders need food. They're going to sling webs. They're going to do things to make sure that they have food. That's an elephant trapped? Interesting. In an ancient site like this, there's, yeah, baby elephants being trapped. I mean, that makes no sense to me in any way, shape, or form. And it looks like they're gonna ride a baby elephant back. If this baby elephant's trapped and injured, the last thing it's gonna do is have these ladies get on his back and be like, "Thank you. Now let me give you a ride." Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Wow, that's that's not gonna. Is that a vine? I mean, yeah. The last thing you want to do is swing on a vine. Maybe that's a rope. Either way, that rope, if it is a rope or even if it's a vine, that rocking motion right there, what's happening is that rope is peaked out on the edge of that cliff and it's going to start to abrade. And as it abrades, fibers are going to break, and you could wind up suffering a pretty rough fall. But one of the things that defines an ancient culture are finding sort of ancient sites or the presence of ancient peoples is something called material culture. And material culture is all the stuff that's left behind. And typically, it's small. It's relatively broken pieces of pottery or arrowheads, ancient midden sites where they cooked food or burned different things that are all indicators that people once inhabited a region. Now, when we come to ancient temples, the temple itself is that material culture. And that is indicative of that somebody once lived there. There was community, there was practices, there was different beliefs in different gods, whether it was multiple gods or a single god or believing in animal spirits. But the presence of the building is the representation that somebody once lived there. It could be huge like that in the macro form, or it can be as small as something like an arrowhead on the ground mixed with little pieces of pottery, some ancient wood char, or it was the early establishment of some sort of community in an area is indicative of some sort of ancient community living in that area. I think when it comes to like the artifacts that somebody could find in the wild, first off, it's pretty illegal to collect artifacts off of uh, national forests, national wildlife, state parks. So you could ultimately be finding the one clue to a culture that has existed, putting it in your pocket, bringing it home, when an archaeologist could actually use that to maybe help further their studies. But if you are on private land, you can collect arrow points and arrowheads and things like that. I found plenty of arrow points on private land, but nothing was really, not known. It wasn't a new discovery. It's just interesting to find them, and it's just awesome. Even if you're highly trained and you have a number of adversaries on you, and I'm going to say that those adversaries are trained as well. I mean, this guy has no armor. I mean, he might be able to get 2 or 3 of them if he gets the surprise on maybe the first 2 and then gets a lucky shot on the third. But as soon as he starts firing rounds, everyone that is protecting this site is going to flood to that location and take him out lickety split. I mean, it's pretty far fetched. I mean, most shoot 'em up games are where they're running and shooting, running and shooting. The adversary is always the dumbest and the worst shot that you could possibly come up with. But he does have Marine Corps training, so we'll roll with that. You could find a large structure like this. They find it down in the Amazon in Central America. Ancient Mayan and Aztec and different sites down there, but they're using ground penetrating radar to find these structures and these old roads. But what really is the first step? Because those have all been overgrown by plants. The jungles, the forest will ultimately take it over. But to just see something like this with ancient wheels and fully functioning doors and probably booby traps isn't the most believable. Typically, the first indicators are small indicators. Maybe it's the terrace of the actual earth where they used to grow plants. Maybe it's stone tools or pottery. Small things lead to bigger discoveries. And in this sort of case, it's just kind of hard to believe that it's just there. Nobody else has seen it. Nobody else has flown by and said, hey, what is this? Let's go check it out. Not very believable.
It's an Enochian script.
Must have been left by Drake. Can you decipher it?
I'll try. The moon will show the way.
Well, that's kind of interesting because the moon is a pretty good way to determine direction. If you have a crescent moon and you are in the northern hemisphere, and the crescent, we think of the crescent just like kind of the tattoo on my hand. If I take the tip of the crescent, draw a line to the next tip on the bottom of the crescent, and continue that line all the way to where it touches the horizon, and you're in the northern hemisphere, that will be a cardinal direction of south. So technically, in his case, the moon could show the way, and if they're going to wait around tonight, which the one guy didn't want to do, they could help get some direction and ultimately find what they're looking for. Wow. I don't know what kind of vehicle that is, but it is covering some terrain. Yeah, I think if these two characters in the game, you know, any survival series, Alone or Naked or Afraid, anything like that, they don't really have any supplies. They don't have the necessary stuff to kind of fuel them, keep them hydrated, keep them safe as far as first aid. I'd give them probably maybe like a weekend. I'd give them like 2 days, maybe 3 days max. But their physical output is so much, they are burning calories left and right. And if they're not replenishing them, they're going to go downhill real quick. This guy's unbelievable. I mean, literally unbelievable. I think Super Mario is more believable than this. And that's just showing my age. Now they're going over the edge. Oh, that's some broken bones. They're not getting up from that. Knife fight. Okay. Here we go. Yeah. The funny part is most of these fights like this, those guys took a hard fall. There's probably some broken bones, maybe even a couple cracked ribs. And now they're turning to some sort of fist fight. I mean, it's just not believable. The knife in the face, the knife in the eye like that. The hardest thing with knives is you never want to get stabbed with a knife. Reason being is a puncture wound is much harder to heal compared to a slice. So it sounds weird, but it's better to have that guy slice you than it is for him to stab you. And the one guy with the knife, I mean, if he knew any sort of proper knife fighting techniques, he might be able to end this fight real quick. But this is Mr. Drake, and he's an archaeologist and extreme knife fighter. I think from a public awareness sort of thing, this does not accurately depict any real survival skills. I mean, this is all shoot 'em up, jumping from cliffs, swinging from vines. It really doesn't. And then they're going to, ride out in horses after a day of full kinetics into this super arid desert. They'll be dead within an hour. I mean, not accurate. I would not take anything that this game displays as any sort of real survival sort of skills. I mean, not a million years. My biggest mind-blowing experiences in nature has been when I had to swim across the Amazon River and then race another gentleman through the Amazon jungle with just a machete. Now, almost very similar to this video game because all I had was one simple tool, but I can tell you, I required water constantly. That's cutting vines to drink water, finding food in the form of Brazil nuts, building a bow and shooting an electric eel, making fire, eating the eel. It was a constant battle of survival for food and water, still while crossing through and traveling through the Amazon jungle. How much you need to know to just survive, just to survive and get by. You're not thriving. Survival is just getting by. And in the video game, it seems like they're thriving at every corner. The gameplay that I saw was just, it was almost unbelievable. the total aspect of gameplay was, boom, you're there, you're fully functioning, you have no injuries, you're not sick, you can do it all with just basically the clothes on your back and the occasional rifle that you pick up from some dead guy that you shot 20 minutes ago. I mean, that's a fantasy game right there. That should be labeled like super fantasy, riding on elephants and, you know, nests full of spiders and pre-lit torches. Totally not believable. I think in the grand scheme, if I was to give this a rating on how accurate, you know, an archaeologist would never do anything like. Survivability, if they were spending that much time, I'm going to say in an Indian jungle based on that elephant being an Indian elephant. I mean, there's a whole array of issues that they could come across from predatory animals like tigers, even elephants. I mean, I didn't really see any food. I didn't see any water. I didn't see any medical. The only thing I did see is that the structure itself could aid them in having a form of shelter. 1 out of 10. That is another episode of Experts React. I am your expert, Donny Dust. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to leave some comments down below. Until next time, see you in the bush.